Welcome, welcome, welcome. I can't do his voice, but I would love to be able to do it.
Of the announcer?
Brockmire, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Welcome to Armchair Expert. I'm Dan Shepard. I'm joined by Mr. Mouse.
Hello.
I always have to wait for a reaction.
Well, I had to process.
Sure.
Yeah. Because at first I thought you said Minister Mouse.
Which I've said.
Yeah, and I like that. I like the idea that I have a clergy.
Yeah, Mr. Minister Mouse.
It also sounds like Sinister Mouse.
It does.
Ooh.
And then, of course, Mr. Minister harkens back to the 80s band, Mr. Mister.
Oh, my God.
There's so much
Ding,
going
ding,
on.
ding.
So many dingles. We have a friend of mine on today, someone who I cherish their insight on many, many emotional issues. And it's an incredible conversation, unbridled honesty on his end.
Beautiful conversation about so many different hard topics, I feel like.
Yeah.
We cover a lot. It's really nice.
Hank Azaria. Hank Azaria is a 6-time Emmy-award winning actor, a comedian, and a producer. He's been on The Simpsons for 113 years. Starred in a great show, Brockmire, and of course, Night at the Museum. And my favorite, The Birdcage. What a
oh my God,
damn
so good.
performance.
And you know what I didn't bring up, which I fully regret? But we were just talking about so much other interesting
non-show busy stuff,
yes.
which is fun. Yeah.
But he's David the Scientist guy on Friends. And that is, I know this
That's a
doesn't
big thing for
resonate with
you.
you, but it is a huge part of my life, David the Scientist guy.
Well, Hank has a new podcast out called the Jim Brockmire Podcast. Jim Brockmire. How does he?
I can't do it.
I'm so excited for you to hear him do Jim Brockmire. But the show features Hank reprising his critically acclaimed role of fabled sportscaster Jim Brockmire. And in each show, Brockmire will interview a guest with his inimitable, we just learned that word, non-imitatable, hardball style, debuting with Charles Barkley, one of the most interesting sports people of all time. Should be great. Please enjoy Hank Azaria.
He's an armchair expert. He's an armchair expert. He's an armchair expert.
Ah, Dax.
There he is. We were discussing Georgia shooting.
I was just saying to Monica that I've only become semi-familiar with Georgia because, like everybody else, there's no way you can avoid shooting there at some point.
But of all the places they send us, it's pretty good. Wouldn't you agree?
It's better than, say, Shreveport.
Or do you remember that you could not escape going to New Mexico for half the year?
Yeah,
For a few years.
There a couple of times. Yeah. It feels like forgotten somehow. It's like even watching Better Call Saul and like even just seeing the location through my TV screen, I start to get like, ugh. I keep thinking of them on the shoot, actually. And I love Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. They're amazing shows and you get very engrossed.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't help but think like, man, look at that location. That just looks bare.
This is one of the great advantages to being married to an actress, right? So just like you, we watch TV in such a specific way that would be so nauseating to everyone else. So
Yeah.
we'll be watching Game of Thrones, right? It's the most spectacular set piece. Everyone's certainly engrossed in it. And all Chris and I can think is like, man, they had Jon Snow like 4 rows back in the wides. He was probably there for 4 nights without any lines. That's all I can think about while I'm watching this spectacular thing unfold.
Yeah, you start thinking about the logistics of the shoot. Totally.
Yeah. It's sad how quickly disillusioned you get. Like, of course, you're operating with tons of gratitude and you recognize it's the most unique thing. And all that aside, you're also just outside and it's cold and it's boring as fuck. It's not always fun.
No, it's really tedious. I was just listening to, full disclosure, congratulations on your success on this podcast. And I'd heard a lot about it from many people and I hadn't gotten around to it. And then I was really psyched to be doing it because I'd heard it was great on my personal connection to you.
Yeah.
I caught up in the last couple of days. I listened to Amy Poehler and Emmanuel Acho, and I particularly really like his uncomfortable conversations. And anyway, he said a thing about how unglamorous the NFL is. And it's the same thing.
Here's another like unique experience that it has to be unique to our business, which is you go to a small town in Massachusetts. Like this happened to me. I was shooting this movie, The Judge. There's all these amazing stars in it, and then me. And you're in this town, and there's a big hubbub. Like everyone in town sees there's trucks and whatnot, and inevitably someone stops you and they say, "Oh, what are they making?" and you go, a movie. Who's in it? Like, clearly they don't know I'm in it. And then you're going through people. No, what? And if you're in something that there's no big star in, it's just the most disappointing conversation. Have you had those?
Of course. What are you kidding me? What day have I not had it is a better, more days than I've had that conversation than not. Yeah, or how about your own self? I get that one all the time.
Yeah.
What do I know you from?
What's your answer? I've got a couple go-tos.
I used to get tight around that question, which is a larger, I know you guys talk about this kind of thing, but now I've settled into complete openness. And I just answer like I said, well, people know me most probably for the Birdcage. Could be Along Came Polly. Could be recently. It's, do you watch Ray Donovan? You love Ray Donovan? So I'll just kind of, but then you get into this awkward, no, not that. No. Eventually I go with, you know what? My name is Hank Azaria. I say it slowly, Azaria. Google me. You'll see all my credits. I promise you'll find something.
You're right. There's a whole experience with it, right? So it's like I've been working, I don't know, for 17 or 18 years. And originally, it just shot a hole right in all my insecurities. Like, oh my God, I'm so unmemorable. They're probably thinking of Zach Braff, to be honest, which happened many times. They thought they were talking to Zach Braff. But of the many iterations, and even when I've been feeling very confident and not threatened by the question, there becomes the tedium of, well, oh boy, so I'm going to probably list everything I've done for the last 17 years.
Yeah.
Like you say, while you shake your head no. So sometimes they'll go, what'd I see you in? And I go, man, I don't know what you've seen. So list all the movies you've seen, and I'll tell you.
All the movies they've seen in their entire lives?
Yeah.
Well, my first one was Chitty Chitty Bang Bang when I was 6.
No, wasn't born yet. That wasn't me.
Well, I've gotten, not just about movies or TV shows, but I think I've been asked, because I'm a character actor, so people like they know my face. I'm not sure from where. I think I've been asked. I've gone to every college in the country with great, like, you went to Ohio State? Like, no.
Oh, right. Yeah.
My favorite one of these, I was in Hawaii in an elevator, and guy gets on and gives me one of these. For those of you, well, nobody can see me, but the big smile and the point, like, right? Like, so I'm like, I'm like, hi. And he goes, you're in the upholstery cleaning business. And I was like, what? So I'm like, what? So I was like, the guy thought I cleaned his couch, but whoever did it did a great job because he seemed so delighted to see me. Yeah, he was big smile. Like, the guy who did such a nice job on my love seat.
Oh. That's kind of lovely. I wish more people approached other random people instead of celebrities with a big smile and a point.
Yeah, you brought my sofa back to life. We thought we were done with that sofa. We had been talking about it for months, and you resurrected it.
Some performance of mine must have registered on him like that. Like, that guy's work makes me feel like my couch just got cleaned in a great way. So that's good. But, I know you guys tend to get deep, and this actually was a recovery issue for me. I'm a sober guy, as you know.
That's how we know each other. I wasn't sure if you were comfortable saying that, but yeah, we know each other.
We can talk about anything you like. I am an open book.
Lovely.
Anything you like. In fact, I'm looking forward to it.
Me too.
But it became an issue for me because for a long time, I was really cranky, as we say in recovery, restless, irritable, and discontent, especially living in New York, where it's constant people in your face almost constantly. And I had those exchanges a lot, as you might imagine. Yeah. I had learned a long time ago to not be rude to people, for the most part, very polite and kind. But inside, I was really resenting being interrupted, not being recognized in the way I'd like. But eventually I got to a point, I did some work around it, like thinking about what's triggering me with all this. And it sure enough did go back to my childhood, because the phrase that kept coming up was put upon. I just felt really put upon by it. I'm like, what does that remind me of? And this is going to sound almost cliched, but it reminded me of growing up and feeling like my parents didn't really see me for who I was. And yet they wanted stuff from me that I didn't even feel was really based on me. And I felt put upon by those exchanges. Like, and if you think about it, when you're a famous person, people don't really know who you are. They kind of recognize you and they kind of want something from you. And it's not even you they want it from. It's their image of you.
Yeah.
So once I sort of unlocked that, and then I just kind of behaviorally said, you know what? I'm going to put a smile on my face for every one of these exchanges. It doesn't matter what's going through my mind. And I'm going to just answer whatever the question is. Like, what do I know you from? What have I seen you from? Did you clean my couch? Anything it was. And it took a little practice. Like, I had to stay with it for like 2-3 weeks. But then not only was I much happier as a result, but I have to say, I couldn't get over how much it meant to people.
Yeah.
People really seemed warmed by it, that they got us, even just a smile back from me. And I felt really retroactively bad that I hadn't been rolling like that for years, you know?
Yeah. There's this great Owen Wilson interview in Playboy. It's the only one I've ever memorized in my life, full interview.
You actually memorize it word for word. That's amazing.
I have two favorite parts of it. Well, one of them was just he kept getting recognized during the interview, and the interviewer said, does that get annoying? And he said, well, you know, it's kind of a cool superpower to just like be able to put people in a great mood when they see you. And I was like,
really good
what
Owen.
a wonderful framing of that. Like, yeah, that's exactly how you should look at it. My road with it now is I had done a USO tour. And when I went, I think they gave us a stack of maybe like 2,000 headshots to sign or whatever. And then I posed for God knows how many pictures. And the whole thing was beautiful and pleasant. And I loved it. And I never minded. And I was so happy to do it. And I got home and I was like, why is that so different than when I'm at the airport, right? Like, what is happening inside? And for me, I realized it was a lot about expectations. So I went there going, I'm going to take pictures with everyone I meet and I'm going to be at their disposal. For me, a little bit of it is the uncontrollability of it or the lack of control. Like if I go to the grocery store, maybe nothing will happen, or I'm proceeding as if nothing will happen, but then maybe there's 5 things that now happen and I didn't anticipate that. And that's my discomfort. Like, oh, I have no control over this. I'll never be able to turn this off. And it's just a loss of control feeling, really.
Yeah, it is expectation. And it sort of needs to be much like program. It needs to be committed to one day at a time. I have to remind myself every day to reframe, like, going to go out, stuff's going to happen. I may not like it, or I may not like the way I'm approached or whatever it is, or interrupted. And that smile thing needs to happen. And it takes practice. And then I became like Pavlov's dog, where after not very long, exchanges that I used to, dread is too strong a word, but not look forward to, because I'm just always smiling automatically. Your body can't tell the difference between a fake smile and an actual smile. It releases like pleasant endorphins.
It can work backwards, they say.
Yes. And I began to enjoy the experience and look forward to it.
Therein lies like, well, for someone who desires great control, I can either feel out of control by this, or I can come up with a little system where actually I take control back. Like, oh, I'm going to smile. It's actually going to change my mood. Oh my gosh, I have kind of a say over my emotion and reaction to this. And it's actually empowering, ironically.
Yes. And I really had to get over myself to do it, because I can give you a very good argument. I can make the very good legal case or the counterpoint case about why I have every right to be very cranky about that.
Yes.
And I did for years. But another nice program phrase, right? You want to be right or do you want to be happy?
That's a tough one. It's for Monica and I in particular.
It is tough.
We just had this guy, Adam Grant, on. We've had him on a few times. He's an organizational psychologist. He's a brilliant man. But we were having this conversation and he said, well, people are basically 3 things. They're either a prosecutor, a preacher, or a politician. And both Monica and I were like, well, I've never experienced politician or preacher, but I am trying a court case every minute of the day. And when I'm not actively doing it, I'm doing it in my head all day long. And yeah, it's so vital to me that I'm right. Oh, it's embarrassing.
Yeah, that's a big deal. I refer to my recovery a lot lately. My recovery work is as shit I'm right about that makes me angry. That's what I am
I love
recovering
that.
from.
Oh my God. Yeah.
My sponsor and I talk a lot about one of the most challenging things in sobriety is when you are genuinely wrong, not when you perceive being wrong or like you're kind of cranky and pissed. But when actually, you just got wrong. Somebody did you wrong. Somebody was rude. Somebody cheated or lied. Somebody done you wrong. But you're not allowed to drop your program tools and become an unpeaceful man just because that happened. And you certainly don't want to punt your serenity, and you certainly don't want to drink or whatever it might lead to. So what does one do?
Well, once you admit, right, that you're the only one that suffers, that's the other shitty thing to admit to yourself. Like, okay, I can be mad at that person and I will suffer. They won't. They're not going to probably think twice about getting the upper hand on me, other than maybe in a celebratory way.
I mean, what I've found is, and actually I heard in the conversation you were having with Amy, you guys were talking about you admired the ability to sort of in the moment kind of express the feelings and get them out and work them through, as opposed to, because Amy was saying she's a processor. She'll go away and kind of feel it and then come back with some kind of packaged response.
Yeah.
I'm actually a fan of that. Not the suppressing of the emotion, not like I got to stuff this down, but I'm a big believer in go process it for real. Go really feel the feelings. I'll call my sponsor, I'll call whoever and say, God damn it, I'm so upset and here's why. And then I'm a big believer in calming down though and seeing what that was all about. And then if there is a conversation that needs to be had, it's best had lovingly, calmly.
And knowing what fear you brought into the thing is helpful.
Yes, and also looking at your own part. Sometimes you're upset because you're triggered and it has nothing to do with what happened. It just reminds you of your dad from when you were 9, or you were wrong and you didn't like being called on it, or whatever it is. And then you're really glad you didn't pop off in the moment.
Yeah.
As long as you use that time away to feel as opposed to come up with the court case.
That is very key.
Yeah.
And to not control, not to let me see how I can contrive this so that I needn't feel and I'm not wrong. No, that's just manipulation.
But that's the temptation.
Yeah. Yeah, it should be a sharing and not a dictating, even if it's a benevolent dictating or a well-intentioned one, yes.
Yeah.
A lot of times these things come down to, like, my wife had to point this out to me a year or two ago. Today is my 9-year anniversary, by the way.
Oh,
Congratulations.
congrats. That's wild
Thank
timing.
you very much, yes. That you go away from a rough exchange, say, or something like this, right, where you got to go, where I've learned not to, if I'm angry, if I'm triggered, I really is best if I shush and go away, because I don't want to pour gasoline on fires or say stuff I don't mean, and it's non-productive. So I go away and I'm doing the right thing. Like, I'm feeling it. I'm venting to my sponsor. I'm going, God damn it, this and that. And so you identify, oh, this is my part. I have a piece of this where I went off the rails. And also it kind of reminds me of when I'm 10, and that's mine too. But actually, there's also this piece that I don't like that my wife does. I don't like the tone with which she expressed it, and I don't want to use that tone, and I don't want that tone used with me. So what I used to do is go, so here's my part. This triggered me about how when I was 10 and this is my thing and I did that wrong. And so I apologize. And also, the tone that you used, can you not use that? And she said to me a couple of years ago, okay, can you separate these two things out? Like, can you either make the amends and then have it be a separate conversation about what you don't like about what I did? I now start with, here's my part, I apologize. And then maybe a day or two later, there was a tone thing that maybe I wasn't loving that we can try to avoid.
It's tricky business, yeah, owning your shit and stating needs and all at the same time. And, sometimes I wonder if you wrestle with this. I'm like, is this all a great gift to my spouse, or is this so exhausting?
Well, look, she's in program as well. My wife is recovering as well.
Oh,
so
okay, that helps.
We're buddies in, if anything, we need to pull back off it with each other. We'll spend hours, quoting scripture to each other or program scripture.
I feel like I would like that.
It's great. I mean, it gets us out of a lot of pickles. It's nice to know that we can fall back on it. And believe me, we have to. You know how it goes. Trigger, then the trigger triggers the trigger, then the trigger. You're off to the races. And then the ability to go off to your neutral corner and process it and then come back with accountability for your side is all there is.
I think that must be helpful because at least you have a common rule book. Most people don't in any sort of relationship. So they're coming with the way they handle things and then the other person does. And sometimes those do not match up, or it's like, oh, I don't actually care about that. Well, I care about that a ton. But at least when you guys have a commonality of how to find solutions, you're doing it in the exact same way.
Yeah. And the phrase you mentioned, rule book, I often think about program and recovery as like this rule book that I always wish I had my whole life. That actually is a really pretty good set of guidelines and principles and parameters to work within. And yeah, the fact that we sort of have mutual agreement and speak the same language in that way It is helpful.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of, just like agreeing on an ethic, which is really cool. The thing we value, they would value. But, I know obviously everything about your current program, but what does interest me, and Monica and I don't know a lot about, we had one guest who was an expert on it.
Whitney Cummings.
Whitney Cummings.
I know Whitney. Yes.
Her Al-Anon knowledge blew my mind, and I was really fascinated by it. And she told me this, which I had never heard, but I assumed to be true, is that generally alcoholics start out as codependents. It's like you're a codependent first, and then you find alcohol, and that kind of liberates you from your codependency. But you were originally an Al-Anon person, right?
Yeah, correct.
If you came up to me and you're like, what's the number one thing you got out of AA? I'd probably say, for me, it's the 4-step, like learning how to figure out my role in things, what I'm afraid of. Like, that's the big breakthrough for me. What would you say is that in Al-Anon?
For those of you scoring at home, who may not know this, Al-Anon is like for families and friends and relatives of alcoholics. The assumption is, not the assumption, the assertion is that alcoholism is a family disease. If you've got one drunk or addict in the family, it's going to affect the entire family, whether it's mom, dad, spouse, child, friend, whoever. And you become what they call a para-alcoholic, which you take on the characteristics of the disease without ever picking up the drink or the drug, as they say. And alcoholism and drug addiction is an obsession. It's a compulsive desire to fix what's wrong with you by taking in substances, and it works for a while. It feels better, and then it gets out of your control, and your health and everybody else is around you start suffering big time. So for Al-Anons, it's the desire usually to fix this person. Oh, my son, my wife, my husband is killing themselves, hurting themselves. I got to help. I got to fix. I got to make it right. So you get so other fixated as an Al-Anon. You get so concerned with somebody else's problem. And again, you're right. You're not wrong. You're right. They should stop killing themselves. They really should.
The person's on fire that you live with.
No one would argue with you that your drunken friend should stop killing themselves. You are technically correct. But again, you want to be right, you want to be happy. Unfortunately, it doesn't work. No one has the power to get somebody else sober, to fix them, to fix their lives.
That's hard for people.
Very, very difficult.
Very.
Yeah.
And it becomes an obsession. And so giving that up. So basically, Al-Anon recovery is all about what you just said, which is finding the 4th step, like what's my part in this? Where mostly Al-Anon recovery leads you to is my part in is I need to come back to myself. I need to actually be more selfish in a good way. I need to put myself first. You make this amends list, and for most Al-Anons, yourself is at the top of that list. I need to take care of myself. I need to mind my own business. I need to find what I love to do besides obsess over this other person and their problems.
Yeah.
And that was me for 7 years. And it was funny, Dax, you might have heard me share this at a meeting or two back in the day. But so I asked myself, well, what do I like to do? What do I want? I came out of a marriage, and we were actually 2 Al-Anons. We were both raised in addict households and drunken households. And neither of us, it turns out I was a pretty good drunk, but I wasn't onto it yet.
There's always a worse drunk you can look at if you want.
There was that. And there was also, I was weird. I would like mix it up. My primary go-to drug is obsessing on other people. So I would spend years in these codependent, crazy relationships where I would obsess about other people. And some of them were drunks and some of them weren't. And I wouldn't particularly use or drink in those periods of time because I kind of had my drunk fix.
Yeah.
And then the second I was single, I would try to drink and snort the universe as a single person. And then as soon as I found someone to play with, I would put that down again and obsess on them. And on and on and on that went for years. So we were kind of 2 unrecovered Al-Anons dancing with each other, which can be really crazy, almost crazier than the classic drunk and codependent.
Yeah, those 2 puzzle pieces at least fit nicely.
Yeah, this gets the curly cues of passive-aggressive complications that start to happen are insane. In recovering from that, I'd have what I called days, where I would literally stare at a blank wall and go, out loud, because I had no idea what to do with myself if I was not reacting to this other human being. I'm like, what do I like? I didn't make a list. Like, what do I like to do? Like poker, right? I started playing poker because I like Frisbee golf, I guess. I like documentaries. I like, and one of the things I discovered I really enjoyed doing was drinking my brains out and running around like an idiot, which was actually healthy for me for a while. It was actually good to get out there and do that. And then that got away from me. That got to be its own problem after a while. And then I got I got sober.
And this may be a very AA or perspective of it, but I will say, I think as us drunks are under tremendous illusions and delusions, I think a lot of people that are caught up in the web of addiction on the codependency side, what they need to admit to themselves is that person allows you to not focus on anything going on with you. Like in the same way that alcohol allows you to not focus on the pain that you're going through, they're very similar in that everyone's just avoiding dealing with the big hole, right?
Big time. I call that dynamic the contract and the messy room. I thought I was a genius for coming up with this. Then I found out that everybody in recovery knows this, but
I don't.
I don't
shockingly.
either.
well, no, they don't call it that, but you just basically said it. The contract in the messy room is this. The messy room is like this big room of junk that you've thrown everything in your house, right? And you just close the door. It's like, oh my God, there's every piece of garbage and messes in there. And you don't want to go through it and look in there. You don't want to clean it, which that'll become your 4-step inventory eventually when you open that door and look in there. But you're like, I don't want to face my pain, my obsessions, my craziness, my hurts, my all of this, my childhood. So you shut that door and you say, you know what we're going to do? I'm going to focus totally on you. I'm going to focus on my sweetie and all their problems and all their craziness. And I'm pretty much going to defer to what they want to do. And the contract is, so we're going to do that. We're going to focus on you and it's going to be your way. And I'm going to follow you around. And I get to avoid my crap, my shit, as you just mentioned. That's a terrible contract, even if it were spoken out loud. But it's usually this unspoken thing, and it builds tremendous resentment. But then one day a month, right, I want it returned. Like, wait a minute, I actually need you. I want to focus on my stuff today. But that's not what we do in this relationship.
There's no room for that.
No,
Yeah.
whether
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
picking the movie or some big emotional problem, it's like, it's all about your thing. So, and then I would explode like, wait a minute, one day a month, I want it to be about me and it's not. And, you know, like, and they look at you like you're nuts. Like, what are you talking about?
That's not what you're advertising.
No.
You're not supposed to need a month. You're supposed to obsess about me all day long. I'm supposed to lie to you and gaslight you, and this is the thing.
Exactly. And so, again, even if that were
Everyone's
stated,
happy.
if it were stated, it would be a terrible contract. But it's like this unspoken thing, this psychic connection that goes on, this agreement. So it was undoing that. And when I got into AA recovery, that's all about service and actually doing for others. But I felt much more capable of doing it in a more balanced way because I knew how to take care of myself at that point. So I could give from the excess and sort of not give to you hoping you'll fix me, but just literally to be giving something away. And that feeling of healthy service, of healthy giving, even if it's a smile at people on the street who want to know where they know me from, right? I don't know how you feel, Dax, but like that feeling of healthy giving that's the high I was always chasing. That's like the closest thing to what drugs and alcohol felt to me.
Yeah, it's the least sexy way in the world to arrive at self-esteem, which is really all I'm craving is like to like me. I was under the illusion that if a couple million Americans liked me, I would like me. That didn't work. I was under the illusion if actresses liked me and wanted to sleep with me, that would make me like me. And lo and behold, talking to someone I don't want to talk to on the phone makes me like myself. I'm not enjoying it per se, but lo and behold, I hang up and I go, oh man, yeah, okay, I like that person. You're the type of person that would take time out of your day to talk about something boring with somebody to help them. I like that guy.
Exactly. It's service. And also like all the stuff we went through, right? Because we've all been through, any of us in recovery by definition means we had a bottom or a series of them, which were not fun and not good and really painful. And a lot of our lives have felt not good to us. And the idea that that pain from those relationships or that suffering or that addiction can actually be of service, like useful. My story can actually be helpful to somebody who's struggling with it.
Yeah.
I have blazed a trail for them a bit. It makes like all that feel like it had a point.
Yeah, prior to AA, my failures were just failures. But now when I share them, they somehow are helpful to somebody. Like they get something out of it. And I'm like, well, wow, that's a flip of how I see that now. And I almost exclusively learn from other men's failures, not their triumphs. Like that's where I learn.
Stay tuned for more Armchair Expert, if you dare.
Is there a Al-Anon books? I know there's the big book for AA, but last year during Dax's relapse, I definitely fell into, I think, a lot of these patterns, and I recognized it, but I did not know what to do or what to read or how to fix it. And to your point of staring at the wall, I would just be like searching for something to do. Like I would just move my cell phone from room to room for like 10 minutes. I would just like sit there and then move it out and then move it to a different room, like just trying to assert some control or take up the space that was going towards the obsession in a different, it's so easy. And I think maybe if you're an obsessive person to begin with, you're like probably more likely to fall into these traps, maybe.
No, definitely. Yes.
Yeah. And I didn't know if there was like a good go-to piece of literature for people.
There's a big book of Al-Anon. I mean, there's tons of literature. If you're interested in a meeting, I'm happy to bring you along anytime.
Thank you.
But, the newcomers packets have little pamphlets in them that are really concise breakdowns. Like one of the first things you want to do is learn the facts about understanding alcoholism. So it's kind of a real crisp, clear, quick breakdown of what the alcoholic's pretty much going through. And then understanding ourselves. And then there's a pretty crisp, clear breakdown of how one reacts to that almost all the time.
Yeah.
And it's almost upsettingly mundane and typical.
Predictable. I know. It's cliche.
It is. It's not that mysterious. It pretty much goes one way for the alcoholic and for the Al-Anonic who's going along for the ride. And one of the things we get over both in AA recovery and Al-Anon recovery is what they call terminal uniqueness. You walk in there thinking, oh my God, my story, you don't understand. No, you don't understand what I have been through. And then it's like, oh my God, not long into recovery, you're like, geez, we're all the same in here.
Some like 400-pound truck driver tells your story. You're like, oh, okay. I wasn't expecting that. And then some woman tells your story. And then, and you're like, oh, huh.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, Hank, I ended up doing an episode about it called Day 7 about relapsing. And 16 years ago, I didn't have a life that was so complete that I had to do a ton of lying. I didn't have those kind of connections. Or my girlfriend at the time also drank a lot. So again, she was geared for that. So I didn't have to lie much. But my life had become so beautiful in this program that I had to lie. I had to look at Monica and say, no, you're off base. I'm not on anything. And then I had to tell my wife, and my tolerance to do that, I think that's the only gift I got out of the whole 16 years is I don't have the tolerance for it anymore.
It created a higher bottom for you.
Yes, it was actually too painful. And I have to attribute that to having gotten to not be that way for so long.
Slips are part of recovery. Relapses are part of recovery.
Well, again, my terminal uniqueness is, yes, slips are part of recovery for other people, but not for me. I'm a special breed. I'm a very intelligent breed of alcoholic.
Well, it's funny what can surprise us and trigger us and make us take a left turn. Right? What do they say in the big book? I just took that left turn right into the, they always use that antiquated, like right into the tavern.
Yeah.
And good old John Barleycorn was waiting for me. And it seems mundane in the moment often. Like it's not, sometimes it's a big dramatic thing. Sometimes it's just like, I'm doing this now. Look at this. Huh. And lying is part of it, right? It's baked right in. I remember I was complaining to my sponsor about a dear friend of mine who goes in and out and in and out and in and out of sobriety. And it really upsets me, and I was saying like, what really gets me, this is me complaining to my sponsors, what really gets me is I'm sitting there in a meeting with the guy. And he's lying about his day count. He's lying, and I know he is, and he knows I know. And he's not being honest about, he doesn't have 34 days. He knows I know he doesn't. And he kind of listened to me. My sponsor's British. He went, so let me get this straight. You're upset because the alcoholic is lying. Is that right?
Because the basketball player is dribbling.
Exactly. And it's like, well, if you're going to put it that way, dude.
Asshole. Well, I got to say, Hank, I met you there, and I want to say it was really in the beginning days. It was 9 years ago. And then you moved to New York, and I missed you greatly. And I always, of the many, many, many luxuries I've had in my life, one is
I've also gotten sober with some entertaining motherfuckers. So, like, I get to listen to you share. That's not too bad. You know, if you got to listen to someone tell their story, it's not terrible that you have the voice you have and the charisma you have. So,
No, thank you. Why, thank you, Dax. Thank you. I consider myself the Ted Baxter of drunks. I don't know why I went there. But yeah, no, that meeting you're speaking of, there's some pretty entertaining, charismatic folks in there. And that does make it more interesting. But I'm now at a point where, geez, I love listening to people in those rooms. I mean, lately, last couple of years, my focus has been ACA.
what's that?
Adult children of alcoholics.
Yeah, I should look into that.
Well, I mean, to me, I'll tell you, it's a misleading title because it's really any household that had any dysfunction of any kind, and you qualify, which is definitely every drunk, every addict grew up in some version of dysfunction. There's just no question. And I really feel like the second one gets sober in AA, you qualify for the Al-Anon program. I believe that because you may not necessarily pursue it or not be your cup of tea in recovery, but because Al-Anonism is about people, places, and things now. And the second you stop, you put down your drug or substance of choice, all of a sudden you have the world to deal with. And as you referred to earlier, I'm an obsessive, crazy thing waiting to happen now. So whether it's with cocaine or with booze or with food or with work or with sex, does not really matter. I'll find where to point it. And sometimes multiple ones at once.
Sure, ideally.
Well, yeah.
If you can be working out and eating a Subway sandwich while getting a blowjob, give me it.
Exactly. I often tried. I would construct days that would look as close to that as possible. And then my first sponsor in Al-Anon was big on what's the root of this? What's like the origin comic book story of this feeling, of this urge, of this obsession? And I didn't realize it at the time, but that's a very ACA way to work where you're like, well, wait a minute, let's go back. Let's find where you first associate these feelings, you know? And like, as I mentioned earlier, like that feeling, why am I having such a hard time with people coming up to me on the street and smiling and asking me what movie they know me from? And sure enough, there was something, it's a pretty big trigger in there from when I was a kid. Digging that stuff up, I have found to be really, really next level for me. It kind of keeps it all sort of present and going. And that's what I'm sort of focusing on mostly lately.
Yeah. Man, I admire how much stuff you're doing. I really do. But alas, we must talk about your beautiful career. And we must talk, of course, about The Simpsons, which is now 31 years. Is that where we're at?
Yeah, I believe season 32 is currently airing. I think that's right. We're about to do 33 and 34, I think. Yeah, I know.
Is that the world record other than like 60 Minutes? It has to be, right?
Yeah, I think, or Today Show or whatever. Yeah, it's the longest scripted show.
So within that 31 years, I have to imagine you've felt the entire gamut about that experience.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is unprecedented and sort of strange in a certain way. I mean, I'm just a voice on it, or voices on it. So for a long time, I retained anonymity within it. I mean, you know, the first solid 10, 15 years of it, who knew the voices behind it, really?
It's once you guys started getting paid a ton, everyone started paying attention.
In particular, yes.
Yeah.
And then that got kind of headliney. And then if you hang around long enough, people start making connections. Oh, that's the guy from The Simpsons. Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, it was being part of like a cultural phenomenon.
A factory of like other amazing talent that like came through, Conan, all kinds of people.
You know, watching all those guys come through, and it really was the writers. As voice actors, we do a good job, you know, but we weren't breaking any ground as voice actors, really. We were just doing, hopefully, a good job. It was the writers who kind of, in their own little way, a little bit reinvented comedy, or a way to do a sitcom, or a way to do an animated show, or combine the two. They sort of broke some new ground there in a way that people really responded to, especially in the first 10 years. So that was fun to be part of all that, you know.
Yeah. Did you resent that you were anonymous? Like, you're on a number one show, it makes a ton of money, you make a ton of money. Was there any point where you're like, there should be some adulation attached to all this?
Yeah, I mean, like a good alcoholic, I'll resent anything that doesn't go my way eventually, at least for a while, in and out. But I was building an on-camera career, as we would say at the time, and so they were sort of parallel. going on.
Yeah, let someone forget. I mean, you're the most, and even when I was reading about you today, it's you can't read an article about the Birdcage that you aren't specifically highlighted as the greatest part of an incredibly great movie with incredibly great performances. Like, if you had only done that, you could lay down in the casket and be pretty fucking proud.
Well, that's what sort of made me, as an on-camera actor, that was like my biggest break. There were a couple of little breaks that led to that break, but but listen, my on-camera career, if you will, has never quite caught up to my voiceover career, but that's fine. It's a pretty high bar on the voiceover side. And one of the nice things, not to bring everything back to sobriety and recovery, but one of the nice things about all of it is making peace with all of that, processing it, staring at it. Oh, that does press my buttons in this or that way. What do I want to look at there? And getting to gratefulness on, isn't it extraordinary that I've gotten to do any of this at all? And not focusing on, the things I haven't done or wish could have gone bigger or better or whatever. I mean, this is one that you don't get a lot of sympathy for, per se. And I also have a tough time convincing young aspiring actors who happen to be sober who I'm sponsoring, like, I'm telling you, you think that the money and the fame is going to fix this. I promise you it isn't. And like, easy for you to say. And I'm like, you have a point. Easy for me to say.
Yeah,
but
valid.
It doesn't make it any less true. I promise you. I also have a couple of sponsees who do have all of that money and fame, more than I do. And they can honestly report it did not fix it. It, in fact, made it worse. Because it's a terrible moment. A lot of people have talked about this in all walks of life, to realize that that level of success and money and seeming control and power, like all good drugs, it does work for a while. It'll feel very nice. And I wish it on everyone that you should have this problem to discover that ultimately a lot of money and fame and success and power is not going to ultimately fix you or make you happy, but it's a good problem to have.
I always imagine, because this has come up many times, and I always imagine like 22-year-old me listening to this, and I know what I would say. I'd be like, that's cool. I'll find out for myself. Like,
sure.
You might even be right, but we'll see. I'll find out for myself.
By all means,
and
go for
everyone
it.
should.
Yeah, I hope everybody does, but it doesn't make it any less true. And it's a terrible moment, right? When you realize, wow, I am a rich, successful, famous, miserable fuck. I have no excuse now.
It's scary. I found it to be really scary because there's nowhere else to point anymore.
Yeah, it's bad. I mean, it's disturbing. Not that anybody should like pity us or like, the poor rich guy. It's not about that, but I'm just saying internally.
Yeah, there's way worse ways to get sober.
Listen, yes.
Very much say that. I didn't come to in a prison cell.
Exactly, or on the street. I mean, there are harder roads for sure, no question. But all I'm saying is I can only report from my own path. It was very disturbing to have all that and realize, boy, I'm not happy. What the fuck?
Yeah. I got to look somewhere else. I got to figure something else out. Okay, so one thing we have to talk about, which I don't think you'll be afraid to talk about at all, but people who listen to this show obviously probably be aware of this. And obviously, Monica's also Indian, so this is a great person to be involved in this conversation. What I know of your response based on the movie, there was a movie, right? The Problem with Apu?
Yes, which was a documentary film calling out the character of Apu and my voicing of it.
Yeah, and man, you want to talk about, if it were me, the temptation I would have to defend myself. Because I would feel like someone was calling me personally a racist, and my identity would be on the line. Like, I'll fight to the death to prove to you I'm not a racist. The fact that your response was such that the maker of the film publicly thanked you for how you responded to it, again, to bring it all back to AA, I mean, it has to be in the mix, right? Like, can you make that response without the work you've done? Not to applaud you for all this. I'm just saying I appreciate the response. So let's just kind of go through what the response was.
No, it's not about congratulating me for the response, because I have a big part in creating the problem to begin with. So nothing takes that away, except maybe an amends over time, which I'm attempting to make. And I'm interested to hear, Monica, I don't want to put you on the spot, nor do I want to put you in the position of a person of color having to talk about any of this.
Be the mouthpiece,
may or may not want to, but.
Well, if this goes perfect, she'll be consoling us by the end of this, which is the greatest pleasures a marginalized person can have.
I'm hoping to bring take a side back door into white fragility, and you take care of me.
You can comfort both of Hank and I as we cry.
Well, no, but I'm glad you asked this, Dax, because absolutely, look, that's a trauma. Okay. That's how it showed up for me. I got called out publicly, I got canceled, however you want to put it, right? And
Yeah.
really, really intensely, like a documentary film in which I was, pardon the pun, the white whale of it, and like blaming me like mostly for it and all of this stuff. Okay. So I dealt with it the way I deal with any crisis in my life, programmatically. And as I've said earlier, okay, so a lot of feelings, a lot of defensive feelings, a lot of hurt, a lot of anger, a lot of, I want to cry no fair, I want to, all kinds of things. So my training as a recovering guy is when my feelings are at their peak, I need to shut up and I need to process those feelings and I need to listen and learn. And in the case of this topic, racism, my participation in racism, or at least in a racist practice, or in structural racism as it relates to show business, or whatever you want to call it, or all the above, that took a while. I mean, that was not like a 2-week process. Like, because when it first all happened, it was happening, I was like, geez, what is all this? It became apparent to me, like, do I keep voicing this character or not? You know? And I couldn't make that decision very quickly. I didn't know how to make it. So I needed to educate myself a lot. Because on the one hand, I didn't want to knee-jerk respond to like what could have been, I'm like, is this 17 hipsters in a microbrewery in Brooklyn just deciding?
Exactly.
Or is this like a real thing? Is this like indicative? I know it's just a cartoon character, but is this representative of an example of a true example of structural racism, at least as it relates to show business in this country? And so I needed to look at my part. So I went and learned. I read and I talked to people. I talked to a lot of Indian people. I talked to a lot of people who knew a lot about racism in this country. I took seminars. I read. I kind of went back and forth. And I know from program to keep my mouth shut until I have some idea of what the hell I'm talking about. Maybe while I'm still confused and hurt and upset and defensive, I don't want to say anything. And I certainly don't want to say anything in today's world of social media or whatever. I certainly don't want to like swing it on a vine of like a tweet or a thing. One of the things that really occurred to me, like sort of halfway through that process, it was like 2 or 3 years between when it all kind of hit and the documentary came out and when I actually went on, it was actually on Stephen Colbert and sort of made a public statement about it. And by then I had felt like, I know what's in my heart. I know what I feel. I know my part is. I know where I stand on this. I feel like I have something thoughtful, intelligent, compassionate, and responsible and owning my part to say. What I really thought about, Dax, was I've had a date with destiny with this thing for like 31 years or whatever it was. The time it got called out for it, maybe 27 years into the thing or whatever.
Yeah.
And if I had not gotten sober in that time, and I was still a drunk guy, I promise you, wouldn't have taken much wine, maybe a half a glass, for me to be in my feelings one night and fire off some kind of tweet that I felt justified in firing off.
Yeah.
You know, some kind of defensive, white, fragile, just like meh tweet.
Yeah.
And boy, am I glad I wasn't in my cups and also had a system in place where I could look at this thing. And what I realized, just to finish, to me, racism, participating in racism, structural racism in this country is about blind spots. I really didn't know any better. I didn't think about it. And that was part of my, I don't love the term white privilege. I mean, it applies. I prefer relative advantage. I was unaware of how much relative advantage I had received in this country as a white kid from Queens. I didn't think about this stuff because I never had to.
Yeah.
And there were very good intentions on all of our part. And we tried to do a funny, thoughtful character. And just because there were good intentions doesn't mean there weren't real negative consequences to the thing that I am accountable for. And let's talk about the difference between shame and guilt, okay? Shame, which we all know from recovery, shame is I'm terrible. I don't deserve to live. I'm a bad person. And this is what drives us to drink. Guilt is I did wrong. I'm not wrong. I did wrong. And I can be accountable for that. I can make amends. I can be responsible for that and try to make it right. And that applies to stuff I did when I was drunk. It applies to my blind spots around this character. And that was the journey I went on. I'm still on. I continue to do this work. I'm really committed to part of my amends for all this is I'm continuing to educate myself. And in fact, I've hooked up with a group called the Soul Focus Group, which is one of the best seminars that I took was with those guys. And we're in the process of creating a nonprofit where we try to bring this work The journey I went on, I want to share with people, of educating myself in this area. And I'm working with them to actually become a facilitator, a trainer of these seminars. I feel like I have a unique story to offer with my journey with this Apu stuff. So we're working on that. We're going to really kind of come out with it in the course of this year. I'm happy to talk about all this. I actually get rather passionate about it.
Well, I want to hear what Monica has to say, but like, okay, that's my childhood, right? So I have an affinity for the show. I have been made happy so many times by that character. I've laughed so many times. I've enjoyed it. I've done an Indian accent 1,000,000 times. I did it in a movie Without a Paddle. I have one line, I do it. I was defensive of you because I'm like, okay, well, we're kind of judging something by 1988 standards today, but now it is the victim of being around for 31 years and, you know, all these things. I'm lucky enough to have become best friends with Monica. Yeah, as you say, recognizing like, holy shit, I just did that Indian accent whenever the fuck I wanted. And I never thought once about it. And I never thought about what it is to be Monica growing up Indian in Duluth, Georgia, and how that's already so fucking hard. And I'm just very grateful that I met Monica, and I need to meet everybody. I've had so many blind spots in that way.
Go ahead, Monica. Let's hear from you in this as we're talking about you and your people. Let's
My
hear from
people.
you.
As if you're not here.
Well, no, it's a journey for me too. I really, really appreciate that it took you 2 or 3 years before you felt comfortable really speaking on it, because it means it wasn't just lip service, or you weren't like, oh, I got to fix my image, or I got to do this. You really committed to learning about it. And yeah, I mean, I think it's so complicated because it is the system that we're all products of, and we do have to individually take steps to change that. But to blame one person or one thing for this overall issue is, I don't think, helpful. I think it's good to, you know, as we're doing now, we're just shedding more light on the overall problem. When Dax and I first started doing this podcast, we would get in a lot of debates about race and accents and all of this
I'd
stuff.
be like, oh, so I can only do white people. I can do Irish people. I can do like, you know, so I'm so offended that I don't have access to every human on the planet. That's my right.
Yeah. And I was like, here's part of the problem. It's that there isn't enough representation in general. Like if there was an Indian person on every show, then you could probably do that. But the fact that there's like 3 representations and they all seem to be very stereotypical, and not just in this case of like a white person representing a Indian person. We had Kal Penn on, and like the first movie he did, the character's name was Taj Mahal. Like those are the things that we're seeing and people are seeing. And for an Indian person, when the representations are Taj Mahal, it's like, okay, the white people around me think that's what Indians are. So they're going to place that on me. And then I have to crawl myself out of that.
Tell Hank about your crush. That's the one that really like broke my heart and hit home for me.
I mean, I think a lot of our listeners have heard it, but for your sake. So I was in 6th grade and I really liked this boy, and we all had like mutual friends, and everyone was boyfriend and girlfriend, and except me. And I really wanted him to be my boyfriend. You know, we're in 6th grade, so take that for what it is. And he liked me and I liked him, and we were all at the pool. And one of my friends went up to him and was like, why don't you ask Monica to be your girlfriend? And he said, well, I would, but her parents work at Dairy Queen. And they don't. But some people don't understand this, because in Georgia, a lot of the Dairy Queens are franchised by Indian families. So there's a lot of Indian people working at the Dairy Queen. And he was not, I don't think, saying, I think her parents work at the Dairy Queen. He's saying, I can't because she's Indian. And, you know, we're kids. And it was kind of the first time that I realized, oh, this is going to be a big problem. I can't make people unsee that or unknow that. And so for me, it's like when there are stereotypical portrayals, that just fuels to this fire that I'm already trying to put out. That's so hard to put out. So that's just my personal story.
But I got to say, I want to add, because she's not saying it, is that truly impacted her life. From that point on, I've met so many guys who are in love with Monica, and I'll go, why don't you, that guy was, No, he's not. Like, shut down a part of her that could see that guys are in love with her or attracted to her. And like a real effect, undeniable.
I have heard a story like that many, many times from many, many Indian people and other people of color. And it has a real impact, this perpetuating this stereotype. And right. So I'm sure it didn't matter to you, Monica, how well-intentioned Apu was in that moment. I mean, it's like I talked to one student in particular I was speaking to at my son's school. I was talking to the Indian students there. I wanted to get their input. 17-year-old boy, maybe a year ago, maybe 2 years. He's never even seen The Simpsons. Doesn't know from it, really, but knows what Apu means. It's practically a slur at this point. All he knows is this is how his people are thought of and represented to many people in this country. Still, with tears in his eyes, he said to me, and it was so sweet the way he put it, he said, will you please tell the writers in Hollywood that what they do and what they come up with really matters in people's lives, like it has consequences?
Oof.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, my friend, I will tell them that. I said to him, and I'm going to say to you right now, I really do apologize. I know you weren't asking for that, but it's important. You know, I apologize for my part in creating that, in participating in that. You know, part of me feels like I need to go around to every single Indian person in this country and personally apologize. And sometimes I do when it
Buy
comes
them
up.
all a Dairy Queen. You owe every single Indian a Dairy Queen.
Well, you know, I want to talk about this. I mean, look, I want to bring together what we were talking about the last 10 minutes. So there I am. It's 1988, right? And somebody says to me, hey, it was like one line. Can you do an Indian accent? I said, yeah, I think so. And Apu comes out. Okay.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, okay. And we all laugh. Oh, that was funny. Okay, good. So that keeps going from there. And over the years, it develops, whatever. Now, in my head was Peter Sellers' performance in a movie called The Party.
Birdie Num Nums.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which was about 1966. And Peter Sellers in brownface. Okay.
Mm.
And doing this really silly character. Now, here's a great example of white privilege, relative advantage. Now, to me, as a 15-year-old, when I saw that movie, at that time, it's 1979, whatever. To me, there's no difference between how funny Peter Sellers is as a French guy as Clouseau, or as a German guy in Dr. Strangelove, or as Hurundi V. Bakshi in The Party. It's just funny, right?
Yeah.
Funny is funny, right? So I'm like, great. And I'm a mimic. I'm an aspiring voice guy. And I can do the accent and I can do Strangelove and I can
Yes.
do Clouseau. And so there's no difference to me either in that way. I'm like, oh, it's all good, right? So I'm happily kind of homaging this joyous character of Apu. I'm thinking of because it's a joyful performance by Sellers, albeit very marginalizing and racist. Now, at the time, Indian people were very upset with that portrayal back in 1966. So now I'm really, how can I couldn't possibly be passing along structural racism more perfectly, at least in a show business context, by taking something that was already upsetting and going, no, this is wonderful. What do I know, a white kid from Queens? I enjoyed it. And I also grew up with Don Rickles, and there's a billion other examples that you can make of how we were just told. I was told as a young aspiring comedian, no, racial humor is fine. There's airplane food, and there's difference between New York and LA, and cats and dogs, and racist stuff. It's all comedy.
Yeah.
Now, what I'm not realizing, of course, is I can feel that way as a white guy because I'm not living with any of the consequences of those things at all. Right? As you just said, I don't have the boy not wanting to date me because my parents were the Dairy Queen people, right?
Yeah.
Because her computer programming mother and engineer father are working at Dairy Queen.
Well, or that's the perception. Now, you know how this really came home to me? Part of this journey I had, I was speaking to an Indian reporter from Huffington Post named Malika Rao. I was starting to get wind that people were having a problem with this character. She said, can I interview you about it? And I said, sure, I'd be interested. And we had this nice conversation. And as we were talking, I realized, I worked with a comedian years ago, a very waspy guy, very funny guy. I don't want to name him, but brilliant comedian. And he would do kind of a stereotypical Jewish voice. Hey, what do you mean? Like this, what? I'm a Jewish guy. And I think about, did that bother me? No, it wasn't my favorite portrayal, but it didn't bother me. It didn't annoy me too much. And I realized, like, as you said, Apu was pretty much the only representation of Indian people in American pop culture for about 20 years, approximately.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if that were the only representation of my people in American pop culture, was a Christian guy talking like this, I don't think I
Yeah.
would have been crazy about that. And then on
Yeah.
top of that, now I hear a lot of the argument, like, and you referred to it earlier, Dax, like, well, where does this end? And that was my first bit of defensiveness too. Like, should I stop doing Cletus now as a Southern guy? And should I stop doing Luigi, who's an Italian guy? And do I not do an Irish accent either? Is that out of bounds as well? And where does it end, right? And here's the thing, is if it's a character of color in particular, as you mentioned earlier, Monica, there's not the same level of opportunity there. So the first argument is, if it's an Indian character or a Latinx character or a Black character, please, let's have that person voice the character. It's more authentic. B, they might not only bring in an authentic voice to it, but the experience of their culturization to it. And let's not take jobs away from people who don't have enough. But on top of that, let's say I had to live with that characterization, a Jewish characterization. Like, I'm still a white guy. So even though I'm not loving that this is what people think I sound like, or my father sounds like, or whatever, if I walk into the grocery store, people don't look at me immediately unless they maybe see my nose from the side, maybe, and make an assumption. They'll go, oh, there's that Jewish guy. He must sound like this. But as an Indian person, immediate, right? Oh,
yeah, it's
look,
your skin. It's
exactly.
Yeah.
You literally wear it. You can't get away from it.
Yeah.
That is the difference. That's why it's not the same as the Italian guy. I mean, I even hear the argument, well, do you have to be a bartender to play Mo the bartender? You're not a cop. You shouldn't play Wiggum. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for more Armchair Expert, if you dare.
Well, I got to tell you, I had two little breakthroughs. One is I didn't like the term white privilege either, but it hit me from being sober, which is the amount of drugs I carried around all the time and the amount of times I was publicly fucked up and the way I spoke to cops when I interacted with them. If any of that stuff had happened and I was Black, I know for certain I'd be in prison. That was my big click. I'm like, oh, I was a raging drug addict for a decade and very out loud about it, and I didn't suffer any fucking consequences. That is a huge privilege.
Agreed.
I'm not in prison. And then the other one I had was kind of doing what you did. So I would listen to Ice Cube as a kid. I loved Ice Cube. He was vocally didn't like white people. I didn't mind. I would say, well, why are people so offended if there's a hillbilly singing against Black people? Like, I listen to Ice Cube. I'm not gonna. And finally it hit me like, well, I'm not going to get pulled over by Ice Cube, then go to court and the judge is Ice Cube. And then, not every single person holding power above me looks like Ice Cube, but every person of power, generally speaking, is white. That's why it's radically different for me listening to Ice Cube versus a Black dude listening to David Allan Coe. That's the difference.
Totally. In the seminars we do, we define racism as legitimate access to power, legit legal access to power, plus prejudice. And that creates racism, structural racism. And much of it is implicit. Much of it is not conscious. It's in the groundwater. As we're raised in it. It's so, like, that was my groundwater. Peter Sellers, Don Rickles, what I was in the great tradition of comedians I admired. And by the way, I'm on board with what white privilege represents. I just think, much like defund the police, it gets too easy to dismiss. Like when I first heard white privilege, I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't grow up with no silver spoon in my mouth. I'm not privileged. That doesn't apply. I'm not
I'm like, 4 alcoholic stepdads, that's my privilege. Violence, fucking being molested.
Exactly.
What a privilege. Yeah, I got
it's too
defensive
easy
immediately.
Much like white supremacist society. It's like, wait a minute, I'm not a Klansman. Where do you see, there's no hood on my, it doesn't mean that. And so I just feel like we can maybe sometimes be a little more intentional around the verbiage. I
agree. I think the left, our side of the political spectrum, is the worst branding in the world. Defund the police. Nobody wants their neighborhood to get more dangerous. Like, there's a better way. Invest in preventing societal issues that end up with policing required. That's a good message.
Exactly. I heard Acho say that. To you guys. I mean, defund the police is a good hashtag. Hashtag, maybe we should reallocate funds for the police so that it goes to better places and everybody's more effective and compassionate. Not a great hashtag.
Not so great. I want to say one more thing about, you said one line and that was that. I think that's for me the big takeaway. It's not about you. It's not about the creators. It's about there wasn't even one person in that room who could say, actually, I think that's a little bit offensive. So that for me is the reason we have to diversify everything, because you need that person's opinion. You need an Indian person in the room, in the writer's room, to say like, yeah, that seems fine, or actually no. That's how we fix the structure of it, is by putting more people in power to say, this is okay, this isn't okay.
Monica, 100%.
You don't trust Hank and I to figure out what's offensive for other people we have no experience living.
Well, that's
I don't
the
know,
thing,
Hank.
right?
It is
That
a
is
gay
the thing.
joke,
How
but
would
yeah.
you? How would you? You don't have the experience. It's not your fault.
Exactly. But you have to know what you don't know, and you have to have respect for that and respect for the real consequences of no matter how well-intentioned or how funny it is. But we're like,
Yeah,
wait a minute,
exactly.
let's check ourselves. Yes, you need someone in the room. And if they're not in the room, I mean, there's ways around this. Like, let's say that just doesn't happen to be an Indian person on staff, but you really want an Indian character in this thing. And so now a bunch of white guys wrote it. Well, now it's your responsibility to take this to Indian writers you trust and say, will you please vet this for me? I need you to look
Yeah.
at this piece of material and give me your input, which I've done a bunch since. It's easy enough to go and run this by people you trust and have them weigh in a sincere way.
I think maybe another thing you and I would agree on, and again, I've said this too many times in here, but I wish there was space and room to say, yeah, man, we grew up in a racist society, so guess what? We're all a little racist.
Yes. We want to start being truly inclusive of everyone and having intelligent conversations. We need to allow people to express where they're at. We talk a lot in these seminars about giving your honest location. Now, it might be one that if you give it about what you think and feel about a topic, either in your ignorance or as a result of the groundwater you were raised in or what you don't know, if that's tweeted, that sentence out of your mouth, you're going to get canceled, and that's the end of you. But that's what we try to do in these seminars. It's like, well, no, everybody, let's say what we all think and feel. Let's start there.
Yeah, let's start by being honest.
Yes, and let's fill in now with education, like the real history of this country. Let's give context to what's at play here. Let's start talking about what's been working on us for about 400 years now in this country and start to unpack that. And once that starts to happen, and that goes for everybody, racism has affected everybody in this country, white people, people of color. No one's benefiting. I mean, white people are having privilege from it and advantage, but it comes at a tremendous cost to white people's humanity and ability to have compassion. It did mine.
In some little corner of your brain for the last 27 years, just knowing there's just this little nugget back here that potentially is going to blow up. That's what we as a country have been living with for 400 years. It's like, well, we all know we have this thing here. You know, it's just kind of lingering.
I want to be clear about what I just said. White privilege is a real thing. White people benefit from it in this country without realizing it. And so obviously it's on the one hand, this relative advantages that we're enjoying. And there's a wonderful article, by the way. It's a pretty standard one. And once you start looking into this stuff, it's called Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack, which lists literally 37 things that white people tend to take for granted or are unaware that is an actual privilege in their lives. Things like, as an actor, I've had to move literally 50 times in my life. Never once occurred to me, am I going to get into a safe neighborhood? Will I be accepted there? Do I have to worry about my neighbors? Will I get in? Will I be annoyed? Will people like me there? My son goes to a private school in New York. Didn't occur to me, is he going to fit in there? Are people going to accept him? Is he going to have a harder time socially as a result of the color of his skin? One of the people I talk to a lot is a guy named Utkarsh Ambudkar, is a great actor, and it actually was in my show Brockmire. He played, ironically, Apu's nephew on The Simpsons. We had a lot of conversations about this, and one of the things that really hit me as I was exploring this was he said that as an Indian actor, and he's doing really, really well now. He's starting to blow up. He's a wonderful actor. He said, every time I get a role, every time I think about how am I representing my people?
Yep.
What am I
exactly.
saying? What am what responsibility am I carrying or not carrying? I don't think. Do you think that way, Dax?
Oh, I always sympathize when we have black guests on for all of those reasons. Like, it's already 5 times harder for them. And then they arrive and now they have to be an activist too.
Right.
Oh, I'm too lazy to be an activist. That's something on top of it already have been way too hard. Now you also have to be an activist. It's like the whole thing is fucking unfair.
And it's hard enough to be an actor. I don't have to worry about, I'm playing a Jewish villain. What is that saying about my people? You know?
Oh, I've almost exclusively played white trash, which I am. So yeah, I never once was like, I'm shitting on the lower income whites.
Yeah, or like turning down parts because it's like, oh, I'm not crazy about the representation here, so I'm going to have to sacrifice an opportunity. They only come almost never. And I'm saying no. That's something you have to contend with that a white person probably does not have to contend with.
Exactly. And as a white person also, by the way, I might think about if I feel as a Jewish person, if there's a role, a Jewish villain that I feel is particularly stereotypical or maybe this isn't making the greatest statement, I might think about it then, but I'm also free to play an Italian guy, an Irish guy, or whatever guy. Not to mention, Jews are pretty well represented in pop culture at this point. So even if I don't love how that guy is coming off, there's a lot of examples.
You got Bernie Madoff. You got, let's go through the list. You got.
Well, especially in entertainment. In entertainment, there's Jewish people in the room, which is why
own the
you
studios.
they own it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes, we are playing to the gallery there. No question about it.
I really appreciate you talking about all that.
Me too.
And again, in a very detailed and open and honest way. I do want to talk about Brockmire now because we've had you for an hour and a half and you deserve to have some promotion. I have seen Brockmire, the TV show, and I don't think Monica has. So I don't want to make you be the parrot who sings, but if you would please hit her with some Brockmire. It's so fucking good.
Monica, this is Jim Brockmire here. This is I call it, he's a baseball announcer. I call this generic baseball announcer voice, particularly of the 1970s. When you speak like this, you describe a baseball game. You can pretty much say whatever you like as long as you give the count afterwards. So you can say whatever outrageous thing you want. Like, let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. I spent most of last night with several hookers and about an 8-ball to blow. And about 15 minutes in, my private parts were swinging down around my ankles as Johnson looks at a breaking ball outside 1-0. So that became a comedic premise. Harry Shearer and I used to talk about years ago, like a baseball announcer can say whatever they want as long as they give the count afterwards. And then I also started wondering about those guys, like, do they sound like that in their personal lives? Like, do they dirty talk sex like that? Do they, and the answer is all the above, yes, to Brockmire. And we did a sketch on Funny or Die like that about this guy walking in on his wife and then in a blackout drunk sort of talking about on the air what an insufferable, horrible jerk of a whore his wife was for cheating on him. And for wearing a strap-on and plowing his neighbor Bob Greenwald. And folks, I do mean right in the ass as Pedro delivers a slather into the dirt. And so we went from there, and then it became 4 seasons of a show and I hooked up with a writer named Joel Church Cooper, who's a brilliant guy who at the time was a young writer of Funny or Die, who I saw it as a way to be funny like that, kind of in a sophomoric way.
How does Brockmire become a podcast? Like, what happens on the podcast version of Brockmire?
We just recorded our first one. I was late to my tech check with you guys because we had our first guest, Charles Barkley, on. And
oh, wow. What a pairing.
He is not a short-winded man. So between Brockmire and Charles Barkley, what was meant to be 40 minutes turned into an hour and a half. But, promoting Brockmire, I would often go on sports talk shows as Jim Brockmire.
Yeah, I saw a few of those and I fucking loved
amazing.
them. Yeah.
So, yes, and then we started writing for that. Like, and I would go on and really do sports takes, like, whatever was going on in the world of sports that week, I would come on as Brockmire and we'd write jokes for that. So it became I realized, this is a podcast waiting to happen now. So instead of my going on Dan Patrick's show, I have him on my podcast and we talk about sports that week, and he gives his honest take on whatever it is, and I say my ridiculous Brockmire things based on it. It's really
so great.
It's become easy to do. So that's all we're doing. I'm doing it with Dan Le Batard. I had most fun doing that on his show on ESPN. He's now left ESPN to do his own thing, and so I'm sort of joining him in his new radio network, and we're going to do every other week a Brockmire sports talk show.
It's so great because what is incredibly funny about Brockmire is the voice. So to be able to just hear it while you're driving and stuff is fantastic. When you were doing it, I was reminded of when Will Ferrell did Harry Carey, right? Yeah, one of his was, he goes, Jose Concepcion hails from Havana, Cuba, where the sun shines 364 days a year. Misses a pop-up in the sunshine. Like exactly what you're saying. It's like all this extraneous shit and then all to get to misses a pop-up.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's the weird. Well, because so much of baseball is 90% of baseball, nothing is happening.
Nothing.
So these men and women need to fill the time with stories about anything.
I applaud them that they don't all get canceled weekly because they're filling too much stuff to not put your foot in your mouth.
And it's happened this year to Brenneman, right? The Cincinnati Reds guy.
What did he say?
He didn't realize he was on a hot mic. Came
Oh,
back
boy.
Oh,
and referred to the gay community with the F word.
Okay.
Oh.
And that was
that was the end of that. Yeah.
That's that. Yeah.
And then in the middle of his apology, you guys should Google this.
Okay.
He's apologizing and saying, I'm a man of faith. This is not who I am. This is, of course, the same game. And in the middle of that apology, guy hit a home run.
No.
And as he's apologizing,
Oh, my
goes,
God.
and that, so I am a man of faith. This is not who I am. That is hit deep out to right center field, and that's
No.
going to be a home run. Absolutely did. Went full Brockmire. Went full blown Brockmire.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Oh
my
God.
Holy smokes. Well, Hank, I adore you and I miss you, and I'm excited to listen to the name of the podcast is simply Brockmire Podcast, right?
I believe we're calling it the Jim Brockmire Podcast with Hank Azaria. I believe that's
Oh, okay.
Oh.
The Jim Brockmire Podcast with Hank Azaria.
Yeah.
So looking forward to it. I adore you. It's really great to see you. It's been a few years. I appreciate all your honesty and transparency, and it was a pleasure.
Thanks, guys.
It was.
Congrats on all your success. And it
Thank
was
you.
Pleasure seeing you again, Dax.
I hope you'll be out in LA and we can all see each other and share our experience, strength, and hope with one another.
Exactly.
All right.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
And now my favorite part of the show, the fact check with my soulmate, Monica Padman. I'm excited to do this.
You are?
Yeah, because we haven't done a fact check in a minute.
Yes, we are back from Hawaii.
Hawaii. Oh, we survived. I guess that's the most relevant thing to say right
We
out of the gates.
survived.
We had talked about potentially dying in the airplane on the way home,
That's
the whole
right.
pod vanishing. And then we pretended we had already made it home safely, but now we've actually made it home safely.
That is right. And we got there. We were waiting on our test results from CVS.
Oh my gosh, that was so stressful.
Our COVID tests. And when we were recording it, I was stressed out about it.
Right.
We were waiting and waiting and waiting. 10 p.m. rolls around. Me and you still don't have our results. We're leaving in the morning at 7 o'clock.
Yep.
I had to make last minute appointments at the airport for 6 a.m.
In hopes that the 5-hour results would come onto our phone by the time we landed, or we would have to
Exactly.
quarantine for 2 weeks or get sent back to
immediately.
Los Angeles.
Ooh. So that got real stressful, but then our results came at
4:43 a.m.
That's right.
Because I woke up suspiciously just at 4:45. I was like, oh, I'll check my phone. Looked, and by God, they were there.
Result.
2 minutes earlier, they had come in. Oh, also, there was a big earthquake the other day, which is an exciting update.
That's right.
4.0. And it was at, again, about 4:45 in the morning. And it was a pretty good rumbling.
Like a really shaky earthquake, but it was very quick.
It was very quick, the quickest I've ever felt. Generally, they last for, I don't know, 8 seconds, 10 seconds, sometimes longer.
This just felt
20
like
seconds,
someone picked up your house and just like jostled it for a second,
and then dropped it.
set it down gently, and then left.
Yeah.
I was asleep and I woke up.
We're mixing stories. Just so we're clear, we're talking about the earthquake now, not the results.
Well, both happened. I
Okay.
woke up both times.
Yeah.
When you texted, my results are in, then I looked and that was at 4:45 and my results were in. And then I thought, oh, I should go ahead and try to upload this to the Hawaii site. I don't want to deal with that in the morning. And then I couldn't do that. That was like 40 minutes of me trying to do that at 4:30 in the morning. Woof.
Even when you got to the house, it had still not been done.
Exactly.
And then on the ride to the airport, we figured it out. But I said, ultimately, this whole thing culminated, if you were successful, in a blue wristband. And there was like 4 different websites involved. It was so complicated.
It was complicated.
That by the end, when they gave us the blue bracelets, which mind you, some of our party couldn't get them, and that became its own circus. I held up my wrist and I said, I think this is my biggest accomplishment in the last year.
I know.
Yeah, I think it's the hardest thing I had accomplished was getting that blue bracelet. And when I saw it, I was a little underwhelmed. I was like, oh, I think these could be easily counterfeited. This would not be hard. I said, maybe I should sell these in front of the airport for $10.
Okay. You're always trying to make a profit.
Always on a hustle. Yeah, I got to hustle.
But you know what?
Tell me.
It was worth it.
It was so worth it. By the time we were there, we had forgotten the whole thing.
Exactly.
Anyways, back to
the earthquake.
shifting gears now.
I've been thinking this a lot. This is a ding, ding, ding simulation satisfiers. Probably why it happened is because recently I've been thinking, I don't really know what to do.
You're supposed to put a huge plate of glass over yourself.
No. See, this is why people make jokes and then I never know what to do.
So for you, you would go in a door frame.
Okay, I've heard that.
Yeah, you want to get away from windows because those can break and shower glass down.
Yeah.
So you would probably just stand in your door frame.
But what about the top of the building? What if it
That's
collapses
why you're
on
under
me?
a door frame, because there's an extra layer of framing around you.
I also heard you're supposed to go outside.
I wouldn't advise that, because if you ran outside, now you're on the ground floor next to a building that maybe glass is coming out of everywhere.
Yeah, I think I would have to run into the street.
Yeah. And cars would be swerving and you get hit by a vehicle. So ironic. You like escaped an earthquake only to be hit by a Hummer.
Okay, so this is again why I don't really know, because run out into the street, get under a door. Yeah, these are all things I've heard, but what do I do for real for
real,
sure?
get in a door frame. If it collapsed, you would be drastically more protected by standing under the door frame.
That tiny door frame is going to protect me from this.
Well, because that's a weight-bearing wall. So when the floor collapses, it's not going to collapse the weight-bearing wall. It's going to collapse the lateral beams that are above you.
Yeah.
You dig it?
Yeah, but won't it, like, let's say I'm standing right there. Look where I'm pointing.
That one? Or this one?
Yeah, that one where you're pointing. Yeah.
Yeah. No ceiling can come down on that. This is a sheer wall all the way up to the second story. This whole middle part can come down.
Yeah.
No problem.
Well, won't it hit my back and stuff?
No.
I'm not. I don't think I'm skinny enough to just be the size of in the door.
For sure you are.
Okay.
I mean, the edges of your boobs might get...
They might get torn off.
No, just something might brush against the distal end of your breasts.
Okay.
Okay.
What if it chops it off?
Well...
Oh, what a horrible earthquake.
yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. You'd lose your swimsuit contract for sure. Anyways, anything else from Hawaii worth mentioning? Oh, let's give a shout out to Monkey Pod. We ate at a restaurant called Monkey Pod that was downright delicious.
It was.
Will this sound braggy? Oh, I don't know if this will sound braggy. You can tell me if this sounds braggy, but I had one of my very proudest moments of Lincoln, of her life, which was we were on the second floor of this restaurant and we were hearing a musician play. And she wanted to go see the man singing. And she asked if she'd go downstairs and look. And I said, yeah, of course. So she disappeared for a while. Mm-hmm. She came back up and I said, oh, what did he look like? And she said, oh, I'd rather not describe what he looked like. He seems like a nice person.
Yeah, I thought that was so sweet.
Yeah. I really liked it.
Yeah, I loved it.
I mean, my hunch is that the person had something going on that she would have felt bad describing.
Yes.
And I thought that was so nice to
It
just
was.
say I'd rather not describe them. But
But she went down specifically to see what they looked like?
yeah, to see the singer playing
Right,
live.
to see the music.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you asked.
And then I wanted to know, like, what did the person look like?
Right.
Yeah, what kind of guy was it? Was it an
Right.
old man? Was it a young chap?
Right.
Was it white, black,
Why do you want to know
Hawaiian.
that? Just cause?
Well, he was singing a lot of Maxwell songs, and I love Maxwell, and he was crushing it. So I guess my assumption was he was black.
Ah.
Yeah. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but I did assume that. But my daughter did not want to tell me, which could have been because he was black, which is also cool. It might have just been that he was black, and she
this
didn't want to
isn't-
say he was black.
Yeah, but then that's an interesting conversation, right? Like, what does he look like? He's black is not derogatory.
It's not.
At all.
It's not. I can see where if she thought the only thing she could tell me about him is that he was black, she just would rather not. I don't know. It is interesting. We're not sure yet what's right or wrong. Us as an evolving people.
It's hard because we don't know what this person looked like.
Right.
So
right.
we can't make any conclusions.
I have to assume it's not that she went down there and there was like some gorgeous young guy singing.
Or maybe it was, and she was just like, I don't care to talk about
someone
looks.
looks,
Like that's
yeah.
not an important part of this.
Huh.
That to me is best case. I hope it was
is.
that.
Oh, okay. No, because she said he seemed like a nice person, which made me think that she had some compassion for him in some
that's
way.
true.
Yeah.
Or though she's saying like, I don't really care what this person looks like. They seem nice.
True. I think she would have been forced to use some negative adjectives to describe the person, and she didn't want to do that because he seemed like a nice
But
person.
then, okay. Yeah, but then this gets into negative adjectives.
Well, if we go back to the black part.
Yeah.
But I'm saying if he had cauliflower ear because he played rugby, or if he had one eye, or any of the many things that might have been going on, that she just didn't want to report on that.
Right. Sure. I get that. I just,
We were by the sea. He could have had like a hook and a
Yeah.
peg leg. He could have been a pirate.
right. But it's only negative if you're saying he had a hook.
And I almost puked. He
Yeah,
He had one
exactly.
eye and a patch.
Right. But if you were like, what do you look like? Oh my gosh, so cool. He has a patch.
And a hook.
Then that's not negative. It really is what you're associating with it.
Yeah.
All of these things.
Yeah. So if you and I were in this situation, like, I went down there and it was a guy with a wooden leg, specifically a peg leg, like a cartoonish.
But you're already doing it. You're already doing it right now.
Well, no,
you
I want
just did it.
No, I'll tell you why. Because I don't actually want to use the example of someone that has a prosthetic limb. I want to make it arch. I want to make it a pirate.
Okay.
Okay. I'm trying to distinguish between. So if I go down there and it's a guy with long, crazy hair and a
Crazy.
buccaneer hat and an eye patch and a hook, I would come back upstairs and I would go, so ask me.
What do you look like?
Oh my God, he's a pirate. He has a peg leg and a hook and an eye patch and a buccaneer hat.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess this is a thought experiment, but I'm not sure where it goes.
It's not though. I guess the whole I think you want it to be, but it's not.
Okay. Would there be anything wrong with what I just said is the question. Because I was just literally describing what I saw, which is there was a pirate playing these songs.
Well, no, because unless he was a pirate,
Yeah.
he might have been a pirate on a ship.
Right. I said, and if I had said, "Oh my God, that guy was a mess. He was so gross. He had a peg leg." Now we're in a
that's
bad.
bad.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. But just here's what we had: a pirate's down there singing. You got a peg leg. You got a hook. You got a eye patch and a buccaneer hat.
Well, could you just say he had a peg leg and a? Well, I don't know if we're allowed to say that.
Well, that's why I'm saying specifically it is a peg leg, the old-fashioned pirate style prosthetic,
Okay.
which is just a wooden peg.
But maybe if you described it without saying he's a pirate, maybe that's best case. By like literally just describing. And then second case is he looks like a pirate. In a happy voice.
Yeah. He looks like one of the pirates from the Caribbean cruise.
Yeah. Although, look, this is a good litmus test. Would you say to him, hey, you look like a pirate?
Well, I think more specifically, I would say, "Oh my God, you're a pirate." I actually would be definitive at that point. If he had a wooden leg and a steel hook and an eye patch and a buccaneer hat and a tunic shirt, he's a pirate.
Well, he probably is just dressing for the part.
Well, and he definitely wants to be seen as a pirate. So it'd be a compliment that I said, "Oh my God, you're a pirate." That's what he's going for.
Okay.
There's no way he's going for cowboy if that's what he's wearing.
Yeah. Depends on the restaurant, I guess, because if it's a
Like Chuck
pirate
E. Cheese?
themed, if it's a pirate themed or a ship themed,
Right.
then maybe he's doing that.
I think there is a ship themed one at the Pirates. What's the Vegas hotel that has a pirate? There's a restaurant in there called Buccaneers.
Oh.
And this is one of the funnier jokes I've ever heard. My brother's father-in-law, he was there with his father-in-law eating, and it was very noisy in the restaurant. And the waiter said, "What would you like to drink?" And he said, "Scotch," or whatever he said. And the guy said, "Sorry, I can't hear you. What was it?" And then he said it a second time. And then he said, I can't hear you. And he said, "Pull the shit out of your Buccaneers."
Oh my goodness. Wow.
It's just funny because he used Buccaneers so quickly. It sounds like Buccaneers, but it's Buccaneers. No, Treasure Island. That's the name of it.
Oh, got
Treasure
it.
Island.
Anyway, so that was a thought experiment gone wrong. But anyway, we're proud of Lincoln.
Yeah.
But we also need
But
her
we don't
to
know why.
We also need her to know it's okay to describe a person.
Well, I said to her, I assumed she was afraid to say he was black because I thought he was black because he's singing Maxwell and it sounds just like Maxwell. So I said, do you not want to tell me because he's black? Because I was going to have that conversation. And she said, "Oh, no, I just don't want to." Like, she didn't want to further this conversation.
it.
And I just respected it.
I'm going to get into some fackies.
Great.
So this is Hank. What a fun conversation.
Oh, my Lord, yes.
So many interesting topics. Sobriety, Al-Anon, the Apu stuff.
And again, I know it's tricky to like commend someone for apologizing correctly, but I just really, really respected the way in which he responded to it. Like with real time, real thoughtfulness, real exploration, and
Yeah.
then came to a conclusion that didn't seem reactionary at all to me, seemed action oriented. And I just found that really, I aspired to that.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so is season 32 of The Simpsons airing now? Yes. Simpsons premiered on Fox on September 27th, 2020, and is scheduled to end on May 23rd, 2021. So season 32.
Wow.
Which leads me to the next fact, which is it the longest running scripted show? It is.
Oh, wow.
Law and Order is second,
How many years is that?
22,
Oh, wow.
still going.
It is too. Oh my gosh. I guess I assume every time I see Law and Order when I'm flicking, I think it's a rerun.
Oh, well, okay, sorry. Law and Order Special Victims Unit. That's the 22 seasons. That's still present.
Oh, wow.
Third is Gunsmoke,
Yes. Back in the 60s?
70s, ended in the 70s. But that was 20 seasons. Then regular Law and Order.
Okay.
And that is 20 seasons. That ended in 2010. Then Lassie,
Oh, sure.
19.
What is it, Lassie? Arf, 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 arf. There's a gas leak in the old barn. Arf, 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 arf. Oh my God, who's out there? Arf, 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 arf. Timmy's there.
Oh, wow. Thanks for that reenactment.
That's how every episode went. He could communicate the most complicated thing. Hey, Lassie, what's up, girl? Arf, 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 arf. Oh my God, Uncle Mike's underneath the truck and the jack fell out and he's crushed between the axle and the floor. Arf, 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 arf.
Wow.
Yeah. I thought of that one off the top.
That was really good improv. Okay, next, Family Guy.
No shit.
Family Guy, 19 seasons, still present.
Oh my gosh, 19 seasons.
Yeah.
Good for Seth Green.
Exactly.
Did I say specifically how much he made when it was going to be rude to say how much Hank made, but there was a point they had to take a reduction, but there was several seasons where they made $500,000 an episode.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Good for him.
That thing's worth billions of dollars, and I'm so glad the voices get paid.
Me too. Yeah, but The Simpsons takes the cake.
32 years.
That's for scripted. Now, I also looked up non-scripted.
Oh, can I guess?
Yeah.
So I would have to either say The Tonight Show or 60 Minutes.
Well, this is confusing because this is saying Guiding Light.
Oh, that
So
makes
soap
sense.
operas,
Yeah.
yeah. 72 years.
Oh, come on.
Oh, but number 2 is The Tonight Show.
Okay.
Yeah, 66 years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Hold on though. Go back to Guiding Light. 72 years
Yeah. No longer in production, but
Okay, but I wish they would have got to a century.
Yeah.
They should bring it back just to get to a century.
You're right. They should.
I promise to watch at least one episode if they bring it back.
When I used to stay at my grandparents for the summers, I would just watch soap operas with my grandma all day.
Oh.
We'd have a whole lineup.
Oh my gosh.
Bold and the Beautiful, As the World Turns, Guiding Light. There was one other. We watched like 4 every day.
It's funny because I think of like this whole binging movement we all live in, this binging era, as like a time where we watch so much TV. But no, people used to watch 5 days a week, 3 hours a day soaps.
They were good.
It must be so great to get a new of your show every day.
Yes, it was.
Fuck, I'm jealous of your grandma for so many reasons.
Yeah, we had fun together. That's when I would like bite her arm and stuff. And
Try to antagonize her.
yeah.
Yeah, you're kind of a troublemaker. You get bored and then you turn on people.
No, I don't.
Oh, okay.
I would pick.
Then what would you describe?
Well,
that?
I just wanted her attention.
Yeah.
I would bite her arm, and poke her. She'd make me cream of weed every morning. Oh my goodness. So the guy from the Cincinnati Reds, the announcer who used a derogatory term.
Oh, right.
His name was Tom Brenneman.
And we were going to watch this, right? He didn't know his mic was on?
Okay, hold on. I
Oh
think
my God, you got it?
One of the fag capitals of the world. Reds Live, the pregame show presented by Ray St. Clair Roofing.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. Well, okay, there's a lot to unpack here. Crazy he said that. Secondly, exactly what Hank was saying, like, do these guys talk like that when they're not announcing the game? And he did. Why did he say it like he was
'Cause that's how
presenting it to the microphone?
That's how they talk.
No, I just farted and got more than I bargained for. I think I have to go to the bathroom and clean it.
Yeah.
Wait,
That's-
what?
That's his whole premise of the
I
show.
know, but it's so, I can't believe it could be that accurate.
I know.
We just found out it's so accurate.
It's so accurate. That's bad.
Did you brush your teeth
Oh my
this
God.
morning? There's a bit of a smell in the box, and I don't think it's coming from me.
Okay.
I'm not as good as Logmire, but it is fun. You don't want to try one.
No,
Okay.
I'd rather not.
Okay.
Anyway, so that was Hank, and I really enjoyed it. I hope everyone else did.
Me too.
And
Me too.
we're going to go watch Guiding Light.
All 77 years of
That's right. What if you started from the
it.
beginning?
Oh, my God. Yeah, so how many days of the week are there in a year? 5/7 of 365. I'm just going to roughly, yeah, this is a hard one. Let's just say 250. Let's say there's 250 weekdays.
Okay.
So that's 250 episodes a year. And, well, let's do 200
Oh my God.
episodes a year just to make it easier.
Okay.
For 77 years.
Oh, my.
So that's 144 and then 2 zeros. 144. 14,000 episodes.
Oh, my.
So 14,000 hours. There's 40 hours in a week. Oh, God.
Oh, my
It's gonna
God.
take a minute. So 4, drop the thumbs down to 140, and then divide that by 4. 4 times 3. So about 30 weeks of straight watching, 30 work weeks. If we watched 8 hours a day every day. So I guess we'll be back. That's doable. We'll be back in 30 weeks for our next
That's
fact
actually,
check.
I would expect it to be much more than that.
Well, I did really fast math that. I could be off by a
Okay.
factor of
'Cause it could be-
tenfold. But
Yeah.
I'm going to pull out the calculator now,
Okay.
as I love to do, as I'm wont to do. And so what we're saying now is that there's 200 episodes a year, not 2,000. And there are 77 years of production. So 15,400. I was close.
okay.
I said 14,000. It was pretty good. Okay. And we're going to divide that by 40 hours. That's how we're willing to watch it. 385. Yeah. So I was really close. We said 300 weeks. But it's actually going to be 385 weeks.
I thought you said 30.
Did I?
Yeah.
Oh.
And this makes much more
This
sense.
does. This is 6 years.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
That makes
Yeah.
much
So
more
divided
sense.
by 52 is
7
Oh my God,
years.
7 years. Is that right?
Let's start it.
Times 52. Hold
And
on.
is that what we're
Oh my
watching
God,
8 hours a day?
385 divided by 52. Yeah. 7.4 years of us watching it 40 hours a week. Oh my God. Is that right?
Yes. 72 years every day. Yes.
Oh my God.
You
Oh
probably
my
could have just done
God.
72, 70.
No, because we went 40 hours a week. Not 24 times 7,
Okay.
which would be, let's
I
see.
don't wanna talk
If we
about
want to
it
go
anymore.
straight through, do you want to do that? 24 hours a day times 7 equals 168 hours in a day times 365. So in a year, we could watch 61,320. That's how many hours are in a year.
I hate this.
This is a terrible game. All right, just scratch that. It's
All
gonna
right.
7.5 years of us watching it 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
I know exactly how we can do it. 40 hours a week, there's 3 40-hour weeks in a week. So we just divide
Wait.
7.4 by 3.
Wait, what? There's 3 40-hour weeks in a week?
Yes, because think about it. A 40-hour week is 8-hour shifts. And there's 3 8-hour chunks in a 24-hour day.
Oh my God.
So there are 3 40-hour weeks in a
Okay,
week. So that
okay.
means there's 120 hours in a week.
But we're not going to eat dinner and stuff.
Right. So listen, so if we were going to watch it 7.4 years, 40 hours a week, all we'd have to do is divide 7.4 by 3, which would be 2.4 or something. So it'd be about 2.4 years if we watched, never stopped.
Oh my God. We'd be malnourished. Why don't we do this in retirement instead of you working at 7-Eleven? This is more fun.
Well, can I say something? You
What?
easily can watch TV while you're working at 7-Eleven.
No,
I see it
no,
all the
no.
time.
No,
I see
because
it all the time.
you have to drive there. You have to talk to people. We're going to be invested. We're going to want to know what's going on with Shannon and
Is that one of the
Mike.
characters' names?
Probably.
Oh, okay. Deborah, Gal.
Yeah.
Oh, Gal.
You love Gail today.
Yeah. I played a Gal in a movie. In When in Rome, I named myself Gal Force Win. Because I said the most, yes, I got to name my character. And I named him Gal after Gal Force Wind because it's the most powerful force on Earth for eroding and shaping rock. But then someone points out water is actually more powerful. And I say, I don't think that's right. And I wrote that couplet.
That's really funny. Really, really funny. Oh, goodness. All right.
All right, good night.
Love you.